Okay, let's get this party started. Historically, we have a larger community turnout when the weather is bad. So we ordered some rain for today. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending. I would like to thank the following people: the nominating committee who arranged this forum, the election committee who coordinates and supervises the volunteers that count your votes on May 22nd, other volunteers taking your question cards. They're going to come around to collect them eventually. So everybody should have cards and pens on their seats. We would like to thank people who distribute the microphones, monitor times, and serving refreshments are the members of the outreach committee. Our wonderful office staff, you probably saw Assistant Community Manager Nirmal Desi is here today, and Administrative Assistant Jay is here. And they are making sure everything runs smoothly, and they have done a great job all week working on this. So thank you. Justin Jabali, that's Justin right here. He is the, First Service Vice President of Community Management. I apologize, okay, for, I miss, well, he has a new title. He had a different title. Anyway, and of course, we would like to thank the candidates who are sitting right here. And of course, again, I would like to thank everybody here in the room and on Zoom that made the time for today. And without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Justin.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I appreciate it. So welcome, everyone. I just wanted to give you all kind of the format of this candidates forum. So the initial start of the forum will be introductions and protocol. That'll take around 30 minutes. Candidates make an opening statement of up to 2 minutes at that time. The next section will be the question and answer section. That'll take between 60 and 90 minutes. Candidates will have up to 3 minutes to answer each question. They will receive a 1-minute warning once their time is coming up. We'll take questions from the audience, take questions from Zoom chat for all of you Zoomers on there. And then we'll also take direct questions in person, if you want to read your question directly to the candidate. We'll do a wrap-up session of about 15 minutes where candidates have up to 2 minutes for closing statements. Then we'll have some time after for you to have refreshments and mingle with the candidates if you have more personal questions you want to ask. Today, you have the opportunity to learn more about the 4 volunteers running for your 2 open positions on your board. This whole program will take around 2 hours, and we will be carefully observing time to make sure we honor that time commitment and to ensure that everyone can ask their questions. This is an informational forum. Questions can be direct, but must also be respectful. This is not a debate forum, nor an opportunity to argue. If you cannot agree to these requests, you may be asked to leave. Also, please, because we have several speakers and 2 audiences, we need to minimize any background noise. Please avoid side conversations with your neighboring or your neighbors during the forum, and please silence your phones. So again, if you haven't already, pull out your phones. Let's get them on silent so we don't have any interruptions. And then same thing on Zoom. Jay will be ensuring that everyone's muted so that we don't have a lot of background noise. Our candidates in alphabetical order, first name is Brian Coates, Cheryl Nelson, Courtney Delphine, and Jackie Grabitas. They will each have up to 2 minutes for an opening statement as we start. Then there will be 3 different program segments for asking questions. Again, candidates will have up to 3 minutes to answer the questions. And I do have some cards just so you have visibility on them. When you have 1 minute left, candidates, you'll see a 1-minute sign. It'll be right there. There you go. When your time is up, you will have the red card. And then if the audience or the people on Zoom are having trouble, you will have a microphone card that you are shown. So the first part of this segment, after your opening statements, will be questions suggested by Nepenthe residents over the years and compiled by the nominating committee. Hopefully, some of the questions you plan to ask will be covered in this segment. The questions cover two topic areas: working as a team and fiscal responsibility. I will draw slips from each of the two baskets and ask two questions of each candidate in random order. Second, when these formal questions are complete, there are cards and pens on everyone's chairs. I know you've all probably seen them already. You will write one question per card addressed to one candidate or to the whole group. So if you want to ask a candidate something very specific, please put their name at the top. If you don't, then just write a general question and we'll ask the whole group. We'll collect the cards from the audience and questions in the chat and from the Zoom audience. I'll read these questions to the designated candidate or to the whole group as indicated. The candidates will answer the group questions in the order in which I call on them. Finally, if you prefer to ask your own question or wish to follow up on a previously answered question, the last program segment will allow you to do that. You will be asked to raise your hand if you are in the room, and volunteers will bring you a microphone. If you are on Zoom, you may raise your hand or click on the raised hand icon on your screen, and we'll call on you at the appropriate time. After the question and answer period is finished, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Everyone is then invited to enjoy light refreshments and mingle with the candidates. Thank you for coming today, and remember, every vote counts, and please vote by May 22nd at 5 p.m. I'll turn it over now to Karen Lowry, a member of the nominating committee, to give a couple of closing statements if she's available. Would you like the mic? Okay.
I'm going to be doing some reminders at the end, so I probably don't need to say much now, but just want to emphasize that, again, this is not a time to go through or rehash anything. It's a chance to ask open questions of your candidates who are volunteers, and you can talk to them personally afterwards for anything else that's more appropriate at that point. But thank you for being here. It's a great group on a rainy day, and we'll give some more reminders at the end. So thank you.
Awesome.
Justin, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, we will start with opening statements and we will go in alphabetical order. So the first person up is Brian. Brian, if you'd like to take your opening statement.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. I want to thank everybody for coming out for this forum, giving the opportunity to get to know me a little bit more. Some of you I know maybe by the pool. I'm usually with my grandson running around here, so maybe you've seen us around. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Sacramento. I have been here for about 4 years. I have an associate degree in math and science and a bachelor's degree in business management. Been involved in a lot of youth sports. Continue to be involved in youth with my international fraternity. I'm part of the Sigma Beta Club, where we are still working with youth. So I continue to serve in that manner as well. Professionally, I've worked for the state for almost 28 years. Started off as an accountant, budget analyst, assistant chief of the budget office, correctional business manager, and I retired as an associate warden over our contract beds unit here. So in essence, I've already served all you taxpayers on some level. Just want to serve you on a more local level now. I bring a wealth of plant operations and fiscal background. I opened up every facility, correctional facility, these small facilities here in California, and then I had oversight of them. So that's all contract management, personnel management, budgets, accounting, bill paying, all that. So I bring a wealth of knowledge in that regard. I have managed budgets of $118 million when I was a correctional business manager over at CSP Solano in Vacaville. I managed a budget of $350 million when I was in the contract bed unit, and as assistant chief over Department of Corrections budget, I actually managed their $5.8 billion budget. So I have extensive budget knowledge. Am I out? Okay, thank you. Huh?
Next statement will be given by Cheryl Nelson.
Hello, and also thank you all for being here. It's important that we be able to talk and meet each other and know our concerns and share them. I'm currently serving on the Nepenthe Board. I've been here for 2 years in that position. I'm the vice president, and I've learned a lot in the last 2 years. My professional background has been in administration and particularly in finding ways to resolve problems and look for solutions and find better ways to do things. I retired from University of California, Davis, the Veterinary Medical Teaching Hospital, where I was director of client services, which meant anybody that had an animal, I dealt with them in some way or another. Within this community, I've been involved with many things. I think from my service here, it's clear that I take initiative. I include the community. I ask for participation, and I welcome the homeowners here. I value this community. When we all purchased here, we signed agreements on CC&Rs and bylaws, and they kind of form the cornerstone of how I approach making decisions on the board. They are rules for us to live by. I look for input from professionals in the homeowner association, business, lawyers, homeowner association managers, and others to give me information, but I also seek outside information. I often attend training sessions from the Community Association Institute. Adam Sterling Law Firm does webinars and has great online sources. I do my homework to the best of my ability. I'm goal-oriented, and I take my responsibilities seriously. I'd like to use my experience in the next 2 years to continue to serve at the board level.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. Courtney, if you can give your statement.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. Yes, thank you for being here on this rainy day. My name is Courtney Delphin, and my partner and I have lived in Nepenthe for 13 years. We've lived in Nepenthe for 13 years. It's still here. Thank you. Campus Commons is a wonderful place, and we're very grateful to be here. I'm running for the Nepenthe board because I want to keep the neighborhood both beautiful and affordable. I want to help to do this by fostering open communication and transparency, and by listening to the neighbors and homeowners, especially when we talk about the grounds and the landscaping that we're also very fond of here. If I'm elected, I will bring over 30 years of budget and forecasting experience to the board. I can analyze great quantities of data, and I will, to see where our money's going and how it's being spent. And I believe that I'm a good listener, and I will listen to our neighbors and homeowners, especially when they question the process that has made very dramatic changes to our landscape, especially in the last few months. I feel like we do have some challenges to face in the next few years, the largest of which is the turf restricting water legislation that was passed last October. We have about 4 years, a little over 4 years time to figure all that out. And we don't want to waste money now, I believe, landscaping for things that we cannot pay for, or actually, excuse me, we cannot water in the future. I feel like landscaping that is safe and healthy now should stay that way and until we can have a cost-effective way of moving forward. As a community, I think we can find common ground on many issues to keep Nepenthe thriving and to keep our dues reasonable. So thank you very much again for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney. Jackie, if you can give your statement.
Hi, I'm Jackie Gorbitas, and I am really excited to see this many people here and on Zoom because we don't get this many people at regular board meetings. So it's nice that people care. I've been on the board for almost 2 years, and it's really been a learning experience because I didn't really know the amount of wheels that have to keep turning to keep this place going. There's a lot of planning that goes into what the board does and a lot of things that have to dovetail to make everything work well. I worked in the commercial insurance claims industry for 40 years, and I handled claims. I managed people who handled claims, and then I audited claims handling. And the entirety of that time was spent as a fiduciary. I was handling other people's money. Most of the people that I handled claims for were self-insured, so I had to report to those people about how their money was spent and justify why I was spending that money. And I see this, I look at it being on the board is kind of like handling claims. First, you look at the coverage on a claim. Well, here you look at the CC&Rs and the bylaws and the community rules. And then you look at the facts, and then you apply the law and the statutes and whatever community rules, CC&Rs that are applicable, and you make your decision. And that's simplistic because there's a lot more that goes into it, but it helps me to look at that way. And that's it. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So the next section will be the question and answer section. I'm gonna pick a question randomly from our boxes here, and I will maintain alphabetical order. So Brian, this question will be for you. So the first question is, can you give an example of a time when you had to make a difficult and unpopular decision as part of a team? What skills did you use to make what skills did you use to make that decision and maintain a cohesive working relationship with the rest of the team?
Well, that's a difficult question. There's so many, but one that comes to mind as the correctional business manager over a correctional facility, you have to meet with a number of people, and one body of people that I had to meet with were the Men's Advisory Committee. And this is a committee made up of inmates that have the opportunity to sit down and, first of all, sit down and have a discussion with my team leaders. And then if they couldn't resolve it, then they have that opportunity to sit down with me for my resolution. So it's really, and then my whole team is there to help resolve these problems. One problem that comes to mind was, and I know it seems simple, but it was about tortillas. And we have to stay within budget, and we talking with my food manager, trying to stay within budget because we feed inmates for $3 a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, $3 a day. And so to stay within that budget, we decided to go from flour tortillas to corn tortillas. And the inmates, they had a problem with that. So they had many discussions with my food manager. Finally, I was brought into the situation. And what we did was, again, talking with my food manager first, we decided that we were going to change a food formulation on this other item that we were serving that I told my food manager once I tasted it, because they were complaining about that. And I get these food reports that I looked at, and they were complaining about it. So I told him, right, we can't serve this is because this may cause a riot. So we, yeah. So sitting down with them, I had a discussion with them to say, look, you can either have this change or you can have the flour tortillas, and I let them decide what it is that they wanted to do. So they were part of the decision-making process as well. They felt heard, and I felt, you know, it came to a resolution. We didn't have any more discussions about the tortilla snafu.
Thank you so much, Brian. For the record, I prefer corn tortillas. Um, So Cheryl, this question's going to be for you. As a board member, if you had to reduce Nepenthe's expenses, what would be specific targets or steps to accomplish that goal?
Well, I think balancing the priorities and the resources is one of the things that we do, just like we do in our own home budgets. We do it every day. We look at what's available, what needs to be done, what's the impact, what are we getting for our dollar? How do we make a decision where things are high priority and low? One of the values in serving on the board is that we have committees. We can look for committees to give input and recommendations. That helps us make a difference in making our choices. We rely on our treasurer to look at financial documents and give us information. All of those things are balanced, but it's a group decision. A board makes a decision, not an individual. So I don't make the decision. I talk with my board members. We consider what needs to be done. We talk about what's the best thing for this community, because that's our charge. The CCNRs say the board is to preserve this community, protect it, and maintain it. And within that, we need to look at our resources. We need to control them where we can, but we also need to meet that requirement. It's a legal requirement for which this community can suffer consequences if we do not maintain those standards. So that's what it is, looking at your priorities, looking at what your plans are, what's the next step, how is it cohesive, and how do you announce it to the community that you're going to be doing it?
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Courtney, this question's for you. If you're on the board and there's a split decision with the majority voting differently on an issue than you, how will you handle discussing the final board decision when you're talking to residents in the community?
Well, I think democracy is the majority rules, and I would talk to the people who had differing opinions and explain how the decision-making process went, what went into it, what financial considerations, I think most importantly, went into the decision that was made. I would just lay out really all the arguments for, and in the case that you gave, my arguments against, and explain why we came to the decision we came to. There are 5 members on the board for a reason, and I think that's an important reason that we do have that deciding vote. And I obviously, if you're disappointed in the outcome, you still vote and you still lay out your reasons for your vote, and that's about all.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. Jackie, this question is for you. Oh. There we go. Have you had experience in developing a budget for a business, an organization, a committee, or a large event? What was your role in that process?
I've done large events before, big weddings, the 50th anniversary of Nepenthe. And really the budgetary experience I've had is creating a budget for my employees and their salaries and benefits. And then working on the budget here in the last year. Because we were basically doing it on our own. So the entire board worked on the budget with First Service. And that's about it. And my own budget. No.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Next question will be for Brian. Brian, as a board member, what are some strategies you could use to ensure that residents feel that their concerns are being heard and considered?
Strategies. Looking at the way that we are currently doing business, strategy could be to change the way that we have our board meetings and having more input from our homeowners. Strategies could be to have a email system to be able to hear what the homeowners have to say. Other strategies, just walking around and talking to people, so that they understand who the board members are, that we're here to hear what you have to say, whatever input that you have. We want to include everybody. There seems to be at some point, there seems to be a divide, and for me, I would like to see more people involved. I'm glad to see so many people here today. I don't really see that many people gathering. We have beautiful grounds, pool, pickleball courts. I'd like to see way more people out there, and just to be able to have those discussions with people and being available to have those discussions with people.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Cheryl, when being part of a team, what attributes do you think are the most important? When and where have you demonstrated these attributes?
Well, I think that so many things we do in our lives basically are teamwork, whether it's husband, wife, family, but also in a work environment, the same kind of things follow through. You've got to listen to people. You've got to be able to look at what they're saying from their point of view, not, hey, they're saying that and I disagree right off the bat, but you have to look at where are they coming from? What's the source? What are they expecting to have different or better or have you or me understand? I've worked forever in that kind of environment, I think, listening to clients, their concerns about, let's say, a pet's health. What are we doing? How are we treating that pet? What is it going to cost me? We're listening to them from where they're coming from, trying to find where it fits and where I can make it work within what I'm responsible for doing and for what resources are available. It's listening primarily, and it's being open in the answer that you give. You need to be able to represent your point and discuss it. That's the way you solve problems, and that's the way you work as a team to arrive at a decision that you can live with.
Thank you, Cheryl. Courtney, this question is for you. As a board member, if you needed to reduce staffing on the management team, how would you approach this task? What might be some of the consequences?
I guess I would need to look at I would take into account the duties that each staff member was doing and how we can consolidate that if we needed to, say, go from 3 to 2 staff members, how we can, the skill sets that we have and how we can consolidate the duties into fewer people. I would also look into ways of creating efficiencies. When we were tasked with that in my previous work with the Employment Development Department, we were basically told, we won't have this staff member any longer. We had to create software, computer efficiencies, things that could do things for us so that we wouldn't have to perform the job that with the staff member that we're losing. And that would be an extremely difficult thing to have to do, but I think we would just have to do it that way by looking at consolidating people's jobs and moving forward at that point.
Thank you, Courtney. Jackie, this question is for you. What is your approach in handling an opinionated person if you have a very different viewpoint and you need their cooperation? Can you give an example of when you did this?
In handling claims, yes, I've done that many times. Very opinionated people have very big opinions about the value of their claims, whether it's their body, their car, their property, whatever. And I found the best way to deal with someone like that is to let them talk and talk and talk and talk until they're done, because you can't get a word in edgewise until they have gotten everything off their chest. And I think that's when they're most ready to listen and talk to you logically, once they've calmed down about their issue. And if they, I mean, if they don't want to listen, there's nothing you can do, but usually the best thing to do is let people get their issues off their chest first, and then you can talk.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Brian, this next question is for you. What does your view of the future of Nepenthe look like? How would you manage our resources to achieve these ends?
I love the way Nepenthe looks now and somehow be able to try to preserve the way that it looks now. I bought here because I love the grounds. Maybe there's some updating that we can do and we can consider based upon, you know, the homeowners' wants and needs. But, you know, that's just my viewpoint of being able to preserve it as the best we can. And however that means, if we need to have different discussions with the gardening, different gardeners, whatever the situation is, to be able to maintain these beautiful grounds, that is the way that I would move forward.
Thank you, Brian. Cheryl, this next question is for you. How do you handle conflict? Can you give an example of when you did so and the results?
I'm thinking of my grandson. Uh, uh, Within a work environment, you have people who have strong opinions sometimes about who they're working with, whether that person works as hard as they do, whether that person shouldn't do the job they do, whether they should have the promotion. And I have found that the best way to work those things through is, again, you listen, you understand where the people are coming from. You ask for examples of what they're talking about where they feel things are inequitable. You look at what the facts are. You decide if they have a point. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but you put it in the context of the framework that you work with. Every one of us, when we've worked or been someplace, I certainly have, there were certain things I was capable of doing, certain things I couldn't do. They were not permissible for me at my level or wherever I was. So you've got to assess that. You've got to decide whether it's mine to solve or another person's to solve. But when I worked with people who had conflicts about, she's not doing her job, he's doing my job, I shouldn't have to, it amounted to talking it through, assessing whether or not there was merit to their question, their complaint, and finding a solution that resolved their perception, either by saying, sorry, you're making this mistake, you aren't understanding this, and I'll walk you through it, or correcting the problem that caused it in the first place.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Courtney, this question is for you. Board members have fiduciary responsibility. What is your understanding of your role as a fiduciary for Nepenthe?
My understanding is that really it's not my interests that I'm serving, it's the interests of the whole group. I spent my entire working career in that, in a fiduciary capacity for the Employment Development Department. I wasn't serving my interests, maybe as a taxpayer, but as the taxpayers as a whole. And so I look at Nepenthe much the same way. I am also a member of Nepenthe, but I have to look at the entire group and what we need and what is best for us moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. And then the last question of our first segment will be for Jackie. Jackie, generally speaking, to maintain current services with normal inflation requires an annual dues increase. Annual dues increase? How would you address the issues of maintaining services, inflation, and possible dues increase?
I don't really know any other way to address it than say it's all possible to maintain our current standard. And taking into account inflation, there will most likely be a dues increase. The cost of goods and services is going up along with inflation. And we've noticed that with the siding project. And besides that, supplies were hard to get. So we've had to make a lot of adjustments because of that. So I think what you do, and again, it's like everyone has said, you have to explain to people what's going on, why this is happening. And the more information you give people to deal with this assessment and the dues increase, then I think they're happier with the result and they're better able to understand it. You just don't want to arbitrarily raise dues and not tell people why. It's always much better if you say why.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So I do have four questions, one directed to each candidate, and then I have a fifth general question that I'll have each of you answer. So the first question, again, in our same format, will be for Brian. Brian, will you advocate for keeping or eliminating Nepenthe's National Flood Insurance Plan?
National Flood Insurance, we are sitting right at the river. And I know that the levees have been shored up. However, if for some reason the levee were to break and someone did not have flood insurance, then, that could be detrimental to us all. And I know the cost is going up and maybe we need to have some discussions with insurance agents or whatever we need to do to keep that down. But I am not a proponent of getting rid of the national flood insurance simply because if something were to happen, I mean, that's what insurance is. If something were to happen, we need to make sure that we're able to rebuild now, not when somebody else, our next door neighbor who didn't have flood insurance now, comes up with the money, 20 years from now. So I'm not a proponent.
Thank you, Brian. The next question is for Cheryl. Cheryl, how do you deal with controversy? Give an example of how you dealt with controversy during your time on the board.
Pick one. Controversy over siding conflict, preparing the siding and where plants exist and the access to that siding. I think that was a conflict that went throughout this community. When you're trying to make a decision about money and where it comes from and where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, sometimes you make choices that aren't obviously the best or the popular one at the choice. When we look at our siding and know that a great deal of the cost of the siding is from water damage and from other things or plants that are close to it, and we have a choice, leave it like this, and in 12 years, we'll have it back again to replace that same spot, or now let's tackle it, let's get it out of the way, let's give access to the workers so that it takes them less time to get it done, they are safer getting it done, then it was a decision that the board had to make to look at the long-term benefits to this community for long-term maintenance. The more we have high shrubs that need to be trimmed and pruned, the more money it costs every year. Let's make it fresh. Let's get it so we're not impeding on the siding. That was a controversy. I think the board made the right decision in saying, let's do it because we have to bite this bullet sooner or later.
Thank you, Cheryl. The next question is directed to Courtney. Courtney, since you have signed the recall petition to recall one of the board members, would you feel comfortable to serve on the board with that person?
That's a good question. And yes, I would. There were a lot of reasons for the recall petition. There were a lot of reasons that a group of us signed it. But I would be willing and able to serve with the person that was named on the recall petition. And I would try and find common ground and we would go forward.
Thank you, Courtney. This next question is for Jackie. Jackie, with your background as an insurance executive, what help and guidance can you contribute to Nepenthe?
One thing I'm rather proud of is that when we had the storm a couple years ago on New Year's Eve and 19 trees fell down, I volunteered to meet with all the affected homeowners, and not as a Nepenthe board member, but as an insurance person and a person who's also had a tree spear through my house. So I met with all 19 homeowners and explained what the process was to them from an insurance standpoint and from a personal, how it affects your life standpoint. And continued to help people out during the process and answer their questions. And one of the most important things they said I told them was, this is going to take much longer than you think to get it repaired. And it did. Another thing that I did is review the insurance policies that Nepenthe carried, and Nepenthe had workers' comp insurance, and we have no employees. The employees that work here are employees of First Service. So we didn't need that workers' comp insurance, and we got rid of it and saved an incremental amount of money, but it needed to be done. So, and that's like when we had the storm that knocked down the 19 trees, I went out with the property manager and the insurance adjuster to make sure that everything was being looked at that I thought should be looked at. So that's it.
Thank you, Jackie. So like I mentioned, there is a question that was written that was not directed at one person, so I'll have each of you answer it. Brian, it's similar to a question you previously answered. Tell me about a time that you had to make tough decisions to stay within budget.
Tough decisions. There was a situation, and it was sort of a budgetary situation where I came into my job that when I retired, I came into that job with a contract for our out-of-state beds already in place. And we didn't really have a contract for transportation of our inmates, but the facility themselves, it was an offshoot of them, and they charged us so much money for these inmate transportations. Well, I've saw one of the invoices one day, and it had this deadhead charge. And what deadhead is when you move a bus empty from one place to another place, they charge you for that. And it was $13,000. And so, I asked the company, what's this about? Give me a breakdown. It took them several months, or actually 2 months, and I still didn't get anything. So what I did was I directed my staff to stop paying them. And I directed my staff to stop paying them. I had 3 people from their Tennessee headquarters in my office the next week. And by that time, I had already calculated what I believed the number should be. And in my mind, it was around $3,500. They came in and almost immediately said, yeah, that number should be $3,800. And so I was able to save in our budget in that regard. In those 2 months, I also had the opportunity to negotiate with other transportation companies. So while they were there, they wanted to codify the amount that they were charging us to actually transport the inmates. And I told them, I'm already negotiating with somebody else. I said, well, wait till we get back to Tennessee and see what we can do. So I was able to negotiate a 30% discount on top of all that. So when they left my office, as they were leaving, they said to me, basically, we've been doing this to you guys for like 7 years. What changed? And I just told them there's a new sheriff in town, and I don't pay for things that I don't get.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Cheryl, I'll reread the question for you. Tell me about a time that you had to make tough decisions to stay within budget.
When I was working for the teaching hospital, we had some wonderful people who did medical record coding. You had to look at what was provided and manually code each thing and enter it into a computer. As we were looking at the future and where we were going with where we were spending money, it was clear we had to make other choices. It costs money to have staff, have them do jobs, and it was cumbersome to then use that data. Somebody else on the other end had to decode it. We realized that what we had to do was find another way, and that was we were the first teaching hospital, veterinary definitely, to go to electronic keyword coding, where the system, every medical record, every word that was in it entered into a computer was part of the code. You could search every medical record from this instead of looking for 3 codes or 4 codes or however many the coder saw or read in the record. That meant we had to change and program and come up with a program. We didn't want to buy a canned one. We found one that we could develop in-house. And then we needed to change duties for people who had gone to school and spent time learning to do this as a career. How do we value them? How do we move them to some other role within there so that we kept them, but we stopped the ongoing expense of an ineffective coding system and moved to something that the whole and now country uses to code medical records.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Courtney, tell me about a time that you had to make tough decisions to stay within budget.
Okay. A couple of years before I retired, the state went through a pretty severe, what we called the Great Recession, and there were some huge budget cuts to almost every department within the state. We were told we could no longer travel out of state, which wasn't necessarily a huge problem, except that we had one piece of software that the Department of Labor required us to go to Washington, D.C. and have training for at great cost. And that was basically eliminated. So what I chose to do, instead of looking to buy another piece of software that would help us do our job, we developed, similar to what Cheryl was saying, we developed the software using our own skills, our particular models that we needed. We used Excel, Microsoft Excel, and we really basically just put it on steroids. And we made it so that we could do the modeling that the Department of Labor was requiring that we do without traveling, without purchasing any additional software. And that's still in use today, and I'm quite proud of that.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Again, for you, Jackie, tell me about a time that you had to make tough decisions to stay within budget.
So frankly, I was never responsible for a budget except my salaried employees and, their raises and that. So I don't have any big ticket budget items to talk about. But here at Nepenthe, it's balancing your priorities against your resources. So, and I think that's all it comes down to here is, we have limited resources. We have a lot more priorities than we do resources. So you have to work through that to figure out what is the most important and take care of those important priorities until you have more resources or redirect resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. So at this time, are there any other written questions or questions from the chat, or can we move to questions from the audience? No? Okay. Are there any questions in the audience? I can come bring you the microphone. I see a hand over here.
I got it.
Oh, you got it? Great. Thank you, Normal.
Okay, can you hear me? Very close. Is that close enough? Great. Well, first of all, Brian and Courtney, congratulations on the very professionally designed postcard. That's the first in history for Nepenthe, I think. It's very professionally done. It was very refreshing, actually. So I have a question for you two. On your postcard, you use the word reasonable several times, maybe 4 times. So I'm wondering, can you commit to a reasonable amount of money, given the restrictions of AB 1572, a reasonable commitment to the amount of money that would be spent for water by Nepenthe, considering that we will not be able to use potable water anymore?
So the question is,
Question is, can you give us a reasonable commitment to the amount of money you will allow Nepenthe to spend to address AB 1572?
so my nickname at work was Tight Pockets. And so I'm very frugal. And so I'm going to be looking at the most frugal way to be able to handle that. I don't know what that dollar amount is, but we're definitely going to be taking a look at to see what's the best way for us long-term, what's the best way for us fiscally. So I'm looking at it from all different aspects. So a specific dollar amount, I don't know what that is, but it will be reasonable.
And I would like to weigh in to say that I really can't give you a number on that. I really can't. And I'm sorry about that. And I will be looking into that. I do believe we need to spend as little as possible right now so that we can address especially our huge amount of green space in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. I do have a written question, but Pat, I see you grab the microphone, so I'm going to let you ask your question if you have one. Okay, absolutely. So I do have a question for Cheryl. Cheryl, the reserve is funded at less than 60%. Do you have a plan for reducing the unfunded reserves? And if yes, what is the plan?
I know this question has come up fairly often about the unfunded reserve. You know, it's a very complex answer. Did most of you got our financial statement just recently, correct? Anybody that didn't, please make sure the office knows so that you get that. And I forget what it is exactly, 58 point something percent funded at this point. Percent funded changes dramatically. It's a point in time. It's not something that we can say we're always going to hold it at this. It's sort of like, well, I get a retirement check. So the first of the month, I get a check. First of the month, I'm absolutely funded for that whole month. But as I pay my bills, my percent funded goes down. The important thing is, do I have consistent income to support that cost or expenses that I have? That's the key thing. I was concerned about the implications. I do research. I like to do research and ask questions, and I like a variety of sources. So I contacted a couple of realtors and a mortgage banker and asked them about percent funded. What does it mean when you're funding or loaning or when you're selling property? And the answers I got were that anywhere between 1 in 8 or 1 in 5, so that's 13% to 20% of home buyers ask about this when they're buying a property. Most of them don't care. When I asked, what do you do when they do ask? How do you explain this? One of them said, well, I have the copy of the Browning study, and it usually says right there, this is adequately funded. And another one said, well, you've got a chart in there and it should show you, do you have the money? And is it projected that for the next 30 years, given what you're planning, what you're proposing, you have the money, you're okay. The issue was for people buying and looking at property, it's how the place looks. If you can get people to accept the idea that an HOA is a good investment, the next thing is maintenance. How does it look? What's the maintenance? And deferred maintenance will overall, they said, kill any sales. So to me, you take care of this place as long as we have the funds, and as long as we're staying and within our Browning predictions, that's more important than an exact percent funded.
Thank you, Cheryl. I believe we have a question here in the front row.
Oh, the Zoom people.
And can you
Oh, I forgot
identify,
about the Zoom people. Zoom people,
can you identify yourself, sir?
let's see, today, my name is Greg Beal, yes. I'm a former board member. Of the 4 people here, and I know the other ones, of the incumbents, who voted for the recall? Raise your hand. Nobody voted for the recall? The incumbents?
So we were given legal advice that we had to. After we voted for it, then we got legal advice that said we did not actually have to.
Okay.
So
So you didn't vote for it?
we all voted for and then we voted against.
I know about you, Cheryl, you didn't vote for it.
I did not vote for the recall.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think we have a question back here. There we go. Then can you identify yourself as well?
Yes, my name is Lisa Tafoya, and this question is for Cheryl Nelson and Jackie Gabritas. In our sole source environment, how did each of you negotiate various contracts?
I'm not sure I understand the sole source environment.
Yeah.
The typical way we approach any contract is to solicit bids and to solicit proposals, not the right word, but we
Requests for proposals.
Yeah, requests for
Yeah.
proposals. We indicate what we are looking for, what we want, and we prescribe that to a variety of vendors, and we wait for their responses. When they give us a response, then it comes to the board. We assess what they've asked, what we've asked, how do they meet this? Are they responding point to point for what we want? Does it look like they can deliver? And then we look at what's it going to cost us? What are we going to get? I don't understand the sole source because we're never looking for sole source for a contract. Okay, and Jackie, anytime, when if we only get one bid, then we don't start sole source. If there only one bid comes in and there's no other alternative, then we have to say, can we do this or not? Do we defer it? If it must be done, we don't always have a lot of choice. For instance, replacing doors for safety and security. We have more than one bid for that, but if we didn't, we still have to make a choice. Where do we make this? Do we have to do it? And proceed.
Especially since it's a security issue right now. Mhm.
Right. Thank you so much. I did receive 3 more questions from the audience. So there is one here for Courtney. Now that you are running for a seat in this election, how has your involvement in the recall of the current board changed your view and/or respect for the election process and commitment?
I'm not sure that it has changed my view. I do have respect for a lot of the decisions that the board has made. I really greatly appreciate them getting us through the last 2 winters with all the major storm damage. I still, given all the same information, would make the same decision regarding the recall petition. I still believe strongly that we need to control our costs right now in the most controllable bucket that we have, and that is landscaping.
Great. Thank you so much. I do have another question. It is not directed towards any individual person, so I'm going to let you all answer it. Because the board cannot respond to homeowner questions unless on the agenda, the current board has utilized the newsletter to answer those questions. how much time goes into that process? Are you willing to continue this? So I guess I'll initially let Jackie and Cheryl answer since it's a specific question about a process that's currently going on. And then I'll let Brian and Courtney answer, how you would continue this process or if you would like to change it.
There's a lot of time that mainly Cheryl puts into these answers. And she goes back and looks at historical data and things like that to make sure people have a complete answer to the question that they're proposing. And then we as a board look at it and all agree on whether to send it out. And I think it's a really good innovation that we have put in place because before people were asking questions and the board couldn't answer. So it just looked like no one cared, but people do. And so now you have answers and it should continue.
Yeah, I used to hear the complaint that we go to the board meeting and we talk and people just stare at us. I thought there had to be a solution that was better than that. So this board has initiated responses. I try to record every question, whether it's correspondence or verbal at the meeting. I draft a response. I look at history. I then check with the board to make sure that I haven't left anything out or have made a mistake. Basically, the board is making responses. It's not me. It's not any one individual because it's essential that on a board, the board speaks, not one member, not one person, not a single individual. It's a board and you respond as a whole. So that those answers are from the board with as complete information and detail as we can possibly provide. And we hope it's helpful. And if I were on the board, I would definitely be intending to continue that and voting for continuing it.
Okay, Brian, I'll let you, again, it's for the newsletter questions. Are you willing to continue this process or would you like to see a different process?
I believe that the process that's in place right now, right, it works for some questions and there's some questions that it probably doesn't work for. When we're in the board meeting and there are some probably more simplistic answers that need to be given right then. However, there are some that do need the research so that you have a complete answer. I'm willing to take a look at other people's ideas of how would they prefer to see that, because maybe there's a different idea that we haven't thought about yet that would be more sufficient for everybody that's asking questions. And I'm willing to take a look at any of those types of solutions that people may have.
And then Courtney, do you need me to repeat it or do you feel good?
No.
Okay.
I do like the current process of answering those questions that can be answered in the newsletter. I think that's a really a good idea and everybody gets in and most people read the newsletter. I would like to see perhaps maybe if we could get some direct answers via email to our emailed questions. So, you email a question to the board 10 days before the board meeting and it's discussed and an email answer to the individual who either emailed or wrote in to the board.
Great, thank you. Again, another question for the whole panel here. The Nepenthe recall has created a great divide in the community. What steps would you personally take to help bring our members away from animosity? Again, start with Brian and then Cheryl, Courtney, and Jackie. Absolutely. The Nepenthe recall has created a great divide in the community. What steps would you personally take to help bring our members away from animosity?
Well, for me, it's about listening to what people have to say. There's some people that are for the recall, there's people that are against the recall, and that's fine. Everybody gets to have their opinion. For me, I would want to have the discussion as to, what people's animosity is, and let's talk about that. Let's get it on the table. Let's try to resolve the issues so that we can squash all this animosity, because we're a community And we need to be looking out for each other, not having these bickering fights because somebody believes that somebody's, whatever their beliefs are about people on the board. You know, it's just, but that's people's opinions and people can have their opinions. But I just want to be able to, you know, hash it out and get it out on the table so we can all move in the same direction.
Any kind of dispute like this is very complex. And one of the problems that I encounter in talking with people is that the board works within a framework. We have first the Davis-Sterling Act that says there are certain things we cannot do. And one of them is to have an agenda and then enter a conversation that's not on that agenda. That is not permissible. That's why we don't answer. We can answer a simple question. No, the meeting will be Saturday. But, well, what are you thinking? Why is that your opinion? Why would you want this? That's not permissible in a meeting unless it's on the agenda. That's true of our executive meetings and it's true of our open meetings. So sometimes I think people do not comprehend that, and that leads to assumptions about what should have happened and who should have done it and what. I believe that there were allegations on the recall that fall within that category. Who should have signed something? When did they sign it? Who agreed to it? All of those things are not necessarily accurate projections of what happened because people do not always know the law. Part of it is then how do we help the community understand the constraints that the board is under? I'm not sure how we ever do that, but there are constraints. Courtney made a very excellent comment. You know, it'd be great to have an answer to an email to the board before the meeting. Why are we waiting? Unless we have a noticed meeting on the board with an agenda that all of you know about days ahead, we can't talk about how do we respond to this. We can't say, oh, this is what needs to happen because of the law. So we need to talk about these issues. We need to do it. But ideally, if the community asks questions and does that through committee meetings, if you can, that helps clarify some of these issues. It's the best place to ask because they can talk in a committee in a way that the board cannot.
Courtney, would you like me to reread the question? Yeah, absolutely. The Nepenthe recall has created a great divide in the community. What steps would you personally take to help bring our members away from animosity?
I think all I would do is just lay out all the reasons those are who are for the recall. What was their reasoning and those who are against it. And we just need to talk about what is causing all of the issues. It seems to me, in reading all of the correspondence to the board, a lot of it comes from the dues increase, and a lot of that comes from the landscaping issues that we've had. And so I would try and bring together both ends of that discussion and put it out in the open. And yeah, that's it.
Same question for you, Jackie.
I don't think, I think this is a small group of people making a lot of noise about an issue that could have been resolved without a recall. The recall is going to cost as much money as an election costs. So if people are against whatever landscaping expense, whatever they want, but they're willing to spend money to make this kind of point that I think could have been done in a different fashion. But like Cheryl says, we can't discuss everything because of the Davis-Sterling Act. We can't talk about exactly what happens in the executive session. And in the executive session, there are things that are discussed that relate to deficiencies in dues payments. You don't want your dues payments discussed in front of the whole community. So that's why that is there. And there are things that we can't cover. And I think this recall is not divisive. I believe it's, and 30 people signed the petition out of 590. So there's 560 people that were silent. And these 30 people are costing the rest of us money to do the recall. And I think there's issues that can be discussed, but it is divisive and there needs to be a way through it. And that's all I'm going to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We did have another question from chat. And, I'll actually start this one with Cheryl because it does talk about a current procedural structure of the board and if there would be a change, but I'll let everyone respond. Would you move discussion, not contract negotiations, of landscape proposals from executive session back to open session?
We're talking about then the individual proposal that our landscaper has presented to do work that is deemed necessary? Is that,
That would be the inference from the question, but it does
Okay.
just say landscape proposal.
okay, basically, our legal advisor has indicated that we deal with those kinds of issues. They are part of a contract. A contractor gives us a proposal that's based upon work to be done. They're saying this is what it will cost. It's up to the board to look at it and make a decision. Do we buy this? Do we talk to this contractor? Are there other things that can be done? We negotiate if we feel it's necessary, if we feel that something's wrong with this. Our legal advisor has said this belongs in the executive session, not in open. What belongs in open is a presentation to the group about what we're looking at, bringing in topics, setting policy. That's what the open meeting is for, where we talk about policy and set policy and announce our business operations. But again, I would go always with the legal advice because we have attorneys, we have management companies that look at homeowner association regulations, rules, best practices. They have a fiduciary responsibility to this community. They're not doing this because it's, why not? They believe that it's in the best interest of the community. And I believe it's incumbent upon me as a board member and my fiduciary responsibility to follow their advice. It's kind of like, I have an outstanding ophthalmologist. She did great surgery on my eye, but I don't want her operating on my knee. I want people who are in this field who has expertise giving me advice, and I will follow that advice. While I want information from homeowners that disagree with it or other opinions, and I think I ask for it, I will follow the firm advice of the experts.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jackie, would you mind discussing again, would you move discussion, not contract negotiations of landscape proposals from executive session back to open session?
No, like Cheryl said, based on legal advice that we've been given, no, we should not. I don't know why we would go against the advice of an expert based on certain people's wishes to have this in open session. And I also think to disclose the vendor's proprietary financial information, what they're charging for what, is negligent on our part, because then that would be exposed to the entire community, which could be used by a competitor of the vendor to underbid them on any other project. And I think we really leave ourselves open to legal liability in doing so. And so I don't think it's appropriate that these specific contracts be discussed in open session.
Thank you, Jackie. Brian, I'll give the same question to you. Would you move discussion, not contract negotiations of landscape proposals from executive session back to open session?
So I'm hearing that, we have legal advice that's telling us not to do that. And for me, I think I would push on the legal people to really say why. Why isn't it that, we're all homeowners here? Why is this information not privy to all the homeowners here? So my deal is push back. I would always push back to see where it's written, where does it say, what's the precedence in this? Why can't we do this? Because for me as a homeowner, I want to know, state of California, we're saying that all these contracts, it'll give advantage to some of maybe their competitors. State of California, all our contracts are public knowledge. They're out there. So yeah, the next time it's time to bid, yeah, everybody has their information. What's the big deal if some competitor got their information? So, because we want to get the best price in any contract negotiation. So, maybe that's a situation that needs to happen. But my deal is I'd be pushing back on the legal team to see, where it said that we can't do this.
Thank you, Brian. Courtney, would you move discussion, not contract negotiations of landscape proposals from executive session back to open session?
Yes, I would.
All right, thank you. And then I do have one more question. I'm not sure if we have, all right, we can take. Can you identify yourself? I'm sorry. Yeah.
My question is, what's being done now, or what would the new candidates do to thwart the massive influx of trespassing people that keep coming from Zone 5, Village 4, campus in our property, onto our properties, and with their animals, and allowing them to defecate on it, and then we have to pay our gardeners to help clean up their stuff. Is there any signage proposals in place, or what is anything being done to protect the privacy of the association's property, given the massive influx of building up here, animal handlers seeing all these people walking their dogs like they belong here on private property?
Thank you, Andrew. Brian, we'll start with you and we'll go in alphabetical order.
Are we talking about folks from the Campus Commons area?
Yes, Village 5, Zone
Okay.
4, everywhere but a person that pays $620 a month to upkeep our community.
So for me, as part of the board, I mean, that's something that, is a good question. And if it is a serious situation, then perhaps we as board members can talk to the other board to see what we can do if that's a serious problem. Because you're right, they shouldn't be, the grounds itself, right? All of it is there for all of us. Although, we pay over here, they pay over there, that's fine. But we should all be able to walk through and respectfully, walk through the whole grounds. And so for me, I would have that discussion with maybe the other board to see what we can do. And if we have some specifics, let's put the specifics out there so that we can try to curtail that if it becomes a serious problem.
Cheryl?
We are called Campus Commons, which means we are in an enclave of multiple HOAs. I think that Nepenthe people walk up in Campus Commons areas as often as Campus Commons villages walk in our area. What's key is that we all respect where we are. If we know someone has a dog that is misbehaving, then that's a separate individual item that needs to be taken care of. It's not a community-wide problem, and it's not a us and them problem. There are all different levels of HOA fees and dues and accesses throughout this community. That's not the issue. The issue is that we are a common community. And, one of the things that's interesting is that Nepenthe does not pay the highest dues in this community, in this entire community. We offer more services than any of the villages do, but our dues are not the highest in this enclave that's called Campus Commons. Those people paid dues, but they received different services. And that's slightly off the topic, I realize. But this is a community, we share it. And as long as we're respectful, I don't believe there's anything else that needs to be done with our co-inhabitants. However, there is an issue with people who are unhoused. And the board is addressing and has to address, how do we control this so that we do not have ongoing expenses and do not incur damages or harm within the community. So they're two different things, and I want to make sure I'm clear that I'm talking about the unhoused, not other people who live in this community that's called Campus Commons.
Thank you, Cheryl. Courtney, your response?
As a board member, I would not change anything that we do. I also walk throughout Campus Commons. My partner and I, we spend a lot of time over at the ponds talking to all sorts of people over there. And so, no, I wouldn't make any changes necessarily as a board member, but I do know that as a person, and my partner has actually personally called out folks that don't pick up after their pets, or that have pets that don't, that are somewhat aggressive or unruly, if you will. It's not the dog, it's usually the owner, but that's how I would take care of it, is on a one-to-one basis with our fellow neighbors, because I really enjoy the entire grounds of Campus Commons.
Thank you, Courtney. I'll let Jackie respond as well.
I agree with Courtney. It's got to be on a one-to-one basis. We can't police all the people that have dogs that don't live specifically in Nepenthe. And Commons, most of our streets, except for Dunbarton and Elmhurst, are public streets. So people can walk their dogs wherever they want. And I really don't know how you can police that as a community, except individually.
Thank you, Jackie.
I've been here for 7 years. I was on the board for 2 years. I don't need this. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting about those guys. I would just make one statement, and it's not a question. Don't recall again unless it's something really, really bad. This association has been racked by this. And it's angered me to where I couldn't sleep sometimes, because the person that was the target is a good friend of mine, and I know she's a pro. And everybody up there are going to do the best they can for everybody. So just as an idea to think about, if you're going to recall, it's a big thing to take on, and it will reverberate for years.
All right,
So
thank
don't
you
do
so
it.
much. Do we have
Thank you.
further questions from the audience? Yeah, Andrew, go right ahead.
Briefly, in a sentence, what's it all about?
We can. Yeah, we can, Andrew, we can talk about, we can talk about it after. Let's keep this as an informational question and answer session. Yeah. So I do have, do we have one more question from the audience?
Yes, this is a
Hypothetical.
Question. Hypothetical situation. As a board member, it is your understanding that an assessment between $6,000 and $7,000 will impact our community in the near future, let's say 1 to 2 years? What steps would you take, if any, to prepare the community for it? Again, it's a hypothetical situation.
So, yeah, I mean, I would say we can answer that question maybe briefly, but if there were a situation where a special assessment was needed to be done in the future, how would you prepare the community for a situation like that, Brian?
Well, first of all, take a look at, really work with the board and take a look at the budget and scrub the budget as best we can. Because 6,000 or 7,000, that's quite a steep amount of money. But if we have come to the determination that that's what's needed, then we need to communicate that clearly to the homeowners as to why. Maybe it's a situation where, you know, we're below the 58%, I think we are now, and we have to get roofs done. And we just need to communicate that to the homeowners and then allow them the time to be able to put that, as much time as possible, to put that money together for that assessment. But it's all about communication.
Thank you, Brian. Cheryl, your response?
Well, I think it is about communication. That's an absolute in everything we do. And sometimes we stumble, just as all of us do, in communicating. We learn from it, hopefully. It's a little difficult to answer a hypothetical anytime. And first, let me say, there's nothing in our financial future that looks like an assessment coming up in the next couple of years. So let's get that out of the way and make sure it's definitely, in my view, and I think the board's view, a hypothetical. If it is something that must be addressed, and let's say 80 trees fall and we need to take care of it and we don't have the money for it, it has to be a community decision, not a decision, but community involvement and options. Do we do it one payment, multiple? And it is communication. What's the status? What's the reason? What we tried? What's not going to work? What are our options? And then the community decides. The board makes the decision, but it has to have community input first.
Courtney, your response?
I think it would be the largest print spreadsheet that you could possibly see that I would put out for everyone to view, to explain why the assessment needed to happen, the special assessment. When we first came here nearly 14 years ago, they had just gotten over a special assessment. And during that time, we understood that the members here could go on a payment plan to address it. And that's definitely something I would consider and look at, because I think that's the most reasonable thing to do if we were faced with this.
Thank you, Courtney. Jackie?
I don't like answering hypothetical questions because the facts you're presented with are usually kind of nebulous, and then when the actual situation arises, you're held to an answer based on some nebulous alleged facts. But anyway, I will say that if there were such an assessment to be made, and I lived here when one was made, apparently 14 years ago, I don't remember exactly, but it was $5,000. It just has to be communicated. Like I believe everyone has said, people need to know why. It's like giving anyone some directive without any information behind it is not going to make it acceptable to anyone. You have to tell them why.
Thank you, Jackie. So I do have one more written question. It is for Cheryl and Jackie. From your generous time commitment on the current board, what things are you most grateful for? Start with you, Cheryl. Most grateful for.
Oh, boy. I have learned, I guess I have to say that this community, I don't know, I've lived here probably about the same time that you have, Courtney. I came in here as a retiree, and I've gotten a lot from this community. It's enhanced my life and it's given me opportunities. My daughter and grandson now live here, as I admire and value this community. Serving on the board, what I get out of it and I'm most grateful for is that I've had a chance to try to use what I know in a way that's positive for the community. I know it's called give back, and that's not quite what it is, but if I can do something and spend my time and energy that is positive, I get a lot more back out of it than I put into it. So that's my gratitude, is that you've let me slave so it feels good. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jackie, your response?
Oh, well, I agree with Cheryl's last remark. When I first moved in here 24 years ago, I was working full-time and we had family and I really didn't get involved in the community at all. I just paid my dues and went on my way. So it's been really interesting for me to understand how the homeowners association really operates, what it takes for it to keep going. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of moving parts here that I just didn't even think about. I just thought everything worked by itself. And, now that I'm seeing all the different vendors that we have to use to keep this place going and all the different things that could go wrong at exactly the wrong times. It's really interesting, but I think I'm most grateful for the people that I met. It's nice to drive down the street or walk down the street and wave at your friends and pet their dogs and that kind of thing and play pickleball with my friends.
Thank you, Jackie. I think we're ready for closing statements or,
I just want to insert one thing. I was going to do some closing statements, but you've been very patient. And we'll send an email out with everything. But before we do the closing statements by the candidates, you all have cards on your chairs or on a chair near you. And if you have any feedback, the nominating committee and election committees really, really, really appreciate if it's too long, if it was too long, too short, to this, or anything about the entire campaign process, election process, the amount of information you get, too much. Thank you. I'm getting the notice about not holding this close enough. Write it on a card. You don't have to have correct sentences. And or, give us an email later or a phone call. So thank you. Justin, thanks. I won't do any more afterwards.
no, absolutely. So we'll move to closing statements then. We'll again go in. Oh, we have one more question. Yeah, well, so there will be a refreshments mingle opportunity. Okay, I don't, are we doing, okay, maybe, can we do it in a form of a question? Yeah, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Jerry Gelfand, 406 Elmhurst Circle. First, I just really want to thank the four of you for being involved and taking the initiative to run for office. It is so important to all of us what the board does and who's on that board. And these are four highly qualified people. We are so fortunate to have these people willing to be involved. And sort of along those lines, there's a lot happening in this community. There are ways to be involved. It isn't just the board. There are committees, there are activities, ways to meet and know your neighbors and be aware of what's going on in the neighborhood. Bottom line is, there are 2 openings, 4 candidates. Only 2 of you will be elected. My wish and what I'm going to say to you is I hope that those of you, the 2 of you who are not elected, will stay involved. It's so important. And you have such qualities to bring forward and to share with us that I hope you will stay involved. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can absolutely leave it as a comment. That was great. Thank you so much. So Brian, we're going to go in alphabetical order. Brian, we'll let you start with your closing statement. Again, the guidance is 2 minutes on the closing statement, if you don't mind.
Well, thank you all for being here and for those very thoughtful questions, allowing me to, share a little bit about myself. If elected to the board, my plan is to enhance the fiduciary oversight of the board while maintaining the beauty of Nepenthe, increasing the inclusiveness of more residents in our community and providing greater transparency. That's really what I'm all about. That's really, I hope I was able to convey that today. And I'm just asking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Cheryl, your closing statement.
It's amazing how stupid I was, I think, when I first ran for the board. I have learned so much in this 2 years. I'm proud of how well our board has worked together. I'm proud of how we've handled some really tough situations. I anticipate that we're going to continue to have challenges over the next few years. I joke that it took me 6 months to find out where the bathroom was because there is so much to learn about what laws, how they interact, what you can do, what you can't do. I finally, I'm not going to put time limit on it. I finally feel as if I understand what's going on and that I am more effective. I'd like to continue to offer what I've learned and my experience to the community. And for another 2 years, I'll learn even more, but I feel like I'm in a better position now than I ever was at the beginning. And I would appreciate you voting for me and allowing me to continue to slave for the community.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Courtney, your closing statement?
I have a 15-minute closing. I'm kidding. I don't have that. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out and the Elections Committee for putting on really, I think, a successful forum. I want to thank the other 3 candidates because I've learned a lot and I find you very engaging and I appreciate your answers and to the questions. And I appreciate the questions. I'm asking for your vote. And I would look forward to working with homeowners and the board to resolve some of our issues and to come together on the things that we need to solve that we may not be able to solve with everybody's buy-in, but with a majority vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Jackie, your closing statement?
Okay, Cheryl stole some of my statements again, or I'm going to steal hers, whatever. But I didn't know anything about how this community ran before I got here. And the last 2 years have been really educational. And there are some things that I would like to see through, like the siding project, painting, all the hoopla with the landscaping, because like Cheryl mentioned earlier, we have rotary sprinklers. They've damaged the siding. The plantings are too close to the siding, so that's damaged it. And we have to move a lot of plants 2 feet away from the siding now instead of the 18 inches in order to get the siding done and replace the rotary irrigation with drip. And I just want to see all that happen. I would like to see everything back and growing. I know that it's going to take quite a while to do that, but I would like to see that through. And I feel like I can build a consensus with the board that we have. I think we function really well. And as a lot of you may know, I'm pretty direct and I speak my mind. So I think with me, what you see is what you get. So vote for that.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So at this time, we will end our forum. If you could please return the cards and pens.
We have boxes over here, one for the pens, or leave them on your chair, either way.
Yep, absolutely. And again, yep.
And refreshments are in the kitchen.
Yep, there's refreshments, time to mingle. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your Saturday.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I look forward to it.